guys, okay, so one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, where did I learn how to program? You know, the thing about it is that there is no one rule that really helps you or tells you the correct direction to go when it comes to programming. But I was pretty much a bit lucky in terms of when I first got my first computer came with something called GWBasic, and basically that's a basic language, and it was created around the time Microsoft created their software and so forth. So that was like one of the first programming languages that were out there, other than assembly and so forth, and C, which was really complicated. And I didn't have a compiler and so forth for those things. So all I had was GWBasic, and really I started to look. There were some example programs. I started to look at the example programs, and that's how I kind of figured out how to use GWBasic, as well as the computers long ago actually had manuals. They had booklets, which one of the booklets was actually included, had commands for GWBasic. So I started off in a background of basic, and then for a very long time I didn't actually program in anything else. In fact, it was really a really long time when I actually started to really program. And how I started into further programming was one day I discovered on a burnt CD Visual Basic 6, and it was a shock for me, because really and truly long ago it was a I think it was a computer store or something that lent the CD out, and I took the CD and I noticed that there was this Visual Basic 6, and when I opened it up, I installed it on a computer. I realized that you had the basic language, the literally basic language, but now you had a graphical user interface where you could draw stuff and draw controls onto it, buttons and radio buttons and checkboxes and so forth, and create a graphical user interface within Windows. And I thought, wow, that was so great. And it was there that's probably 5 years after GWBasic or 5 or 10 years after that actually that I got into Visual Basic and just playing around. And at that point in time, it wasn't anything professional. It wasn't to do professional work or anything like that. It was just to get that was fun. That was like Lego for me. And so from that time, then I started to go to secondary school and so forth, and you know, I would just do my computers and stuff as a sideline thing, just like, you know, helping out people, surfing the internet, etc. And then eventually I noticed that I had this, you know, a passion as well as the ability to solve problems and so forth. And then I took it to, I furthered it into university, where I did my bachelor's in computer science. And when I did that, during that time of doing the bachelor's in computer science, they were teaching Java. And I thought to myself, wow, I hate Java. A lot of people hate Java. It was slow. For those of you who could remember, Java applets on your browser would crash and cause all kind of problems. It would take forever to load and so forth. And I was like, why does the university want to teach Java? And that has been at least about 10 years ago. And I have to tell you that my opinion has changed recently, coming back to loving Java and what Java can do, because Java really has some cool stuff other than what you think it has in terms of the applets and so forth. There's actually web interfaces you could create in Java with JSP, and it's really new now. Even though JSP is considered old and boring, you can do a lot of cool stuff. You can mix JSPs with objects and all sorts of different things now with the Enterprise Edition of Java. So I have renewed my love for Java. With that being said, while I was in university, because I kind of disliked Java, hated Java, whatever you want to call it, I actually started to program in Perl. And I started to program in Perl because I had this sideline project, which was the SMS project, and I did the SMS project for a pretty long time, it was about 2 years. And during that time, I learned about CGI and server-side scripting. And during that time, when I was programming in Perl and so forth, I discovered something called PHP, which is hypertext whatever language, hypertext programming or programming language. And basically, PHP allowed me to do what I did with Perl, but integrate it into the actual pages. And so that's my sort of roadmap on how I started to program and why I started to love to program and love programming itself. I did actually also, I took one course where I learned how to program in C, but I never really liked it. A lot of the stuff I didn't like was like the memory, the pointers and so forth. And those, I know that there are a lot of you guys who may be watching this this video and saying, "Way, I mean, you know, it might even upset you." But the thing about this is just my preference, and I'm sure that you would have your preference as well too. But that's how I got into programming. A lot of the times, though, and I say the secret to programming is, of course, if you have examples, that would be the easiest way to figure it out, where you have examples and you play around with the examples. But also look for APIs. That was something that I looked for, and that is what helped me to excel in Java. Java had excellent documentation about the actual programming language. And so you could just go into the Java documentation and find out more about the functions, classes, etc. and pretty much just use the functions and classes there. For a language that doesn't have a very good API, for example, things like JavaScript, I didn't come across an excellent API, but there are W3C, the schooling that is online for free that you could also learn JavaScript as well too. So I would suggest that if you can't find an API, go to W3C school and learn from there how to do programming. So guys, basically that's what I did. I would practice, and one of the other tips that I would suggest is that when you're programming, program line by line, compile line by line. So for example, you don't want to build or type out an entire program and then realize that your program has compile errors and so forth. So what you want to do is, you know, line by line, when you make one change, then you test it, make sure it works, and then go ahead. Because that was one of the things that I realized a lot of my friends in university had problems with. They would write the entire program sort of in pseudocode and then rewrite it in Java, and then realize there's so much errors they can't get to compile, and that used to frustrate them greatly. I could see the frustration. So I would suggest that if you have to do it, you program line by line until you get really, really good. And every time you line by line, you compile and you run and you make sure that it works. Okay guys, so I hope that this was a helpful video for you guys. If it was, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. I do a lot more than just programming. I do photography. I do you know, all sorts of different things. Sometimes I have a little joke section and so forth. So it's really a multifaceted channel where I spend a lot of time just bringing stuff to you guys. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon.